Daniel Harper had been a diplomat for 35 years. He had seen wars start and end. He had watched empires rise and fall. But he had never seen anything like the creature sitting across from him now. High, sovereign Maldois of the Vexery Empire was massive. His gray skin stretched over a body that stood nearly 8 feet tall. His forearms rested on the table between them, and his yellow eyes never blinked. Behind him, through the large window of the diplomatic station, Daniel could see the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth waited for news. "You have heard our terms," Maldois said. His voice was deep and cold. "Surrender all your colonial worlds. Give us control of your military. Accept our rule, or we will destroy everything you have built." Daniel kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing fear to aliens like the Vexery was the worst thing a human could do. They respected strength, even when that strength was just a mask. "That is a serious demand," Daniel said. "May I ask what happens to our people if we refuse?" Maldois smiled. It was not a pleasant sight. His teeth were sharp and black. "If you refuse, we will burn your worlds one by one. We will start with your colonies. Then we will come for Earth itself. Your species will become nothing but a memory." Lisa Monroe sat beside Daniel. She was younger than him by many years, with dark hair and quick eyes. She worked as his communications specialist, and right now she was receiving messages on a small device hidden in her sleeve. Her face had gone pale, but she said nothing. "We have 10,000 warships surrounding your home system right now," Maldois continued. "Your fleet number's perhaps 600. The math is simple, human. You cannot win." Daniel nodded slowly. "Numbers are important. I understand that. Then you understand your position." Maldois leaned forward. "I am not without mercy. Surrender now, and your people will live. They will serve the Empire, yes, but they will live. Is that not better than death?" Commander Kevin Grant stood near the door. He was a military man, tall and strong, with gray hair and a scar on his chin from an old battle. His hands were tight-fisted at his sides, but he stayed silent. This was Daniel's meeting, not his. "I need to speak with my government," Daniel said. "A decision of this size cannot be made by one man." "Of course." Maldois waved one of his 4 hands. "I will give you time, but not much. You have 24 hours to bring me your answer. After that, my ships will begin their work." Daniel stood up from his chair. 24 hours is not much time to decide the fate of a species. "It is more time than I gave others," Maldois said. "The Kalori had 12 hours. The Manthi had 6. Consider yourselves fortunate." Daniel bowed his head slightly. It was not respect. It was simply the way things were done in galactic diplomacy. Then he turned and walked out of the room, with Lisa and Kevin following close behind. They did not speak until they reached their own ship. It was small compared to the massive Vexery vessels that filled the space around them. As the door closed behind them, Lisa finally let out a breath. "Daniel, it's worse than we thought." She pulled up a holographic display from her device. Images filled the air between them. "Vexery ground forces have already landed on 3 of our colony worlds: New Sydney, Frontiers Hope, and Meridian. They're not waiting for an answer. They're already taking what they want." Kevin slammed his hand against the wall. "This is not negotiation. This is conquest with extra steps." "It always was," Daniel said quietly. He studied the images. Vexery soldiers marching through human streets. Families running from their homes. Children crying in their parents' arms. It was hard to watch, but he made himself look. "What do we tell Earth?" Lisa asked. "What can we possibly tell them?" Daniel sat down heavily in his chair. He was 58 years old, and right now he felt every single year. "We tell them the truth. The Vexri have us trapped. Our military cannot win a straight fight. If we resist, billions will die. So we just give up? Kevin's voice was angry. We just hand over everything our species has built? I did not say that. Daniel looked up at the commander. I said we cannot win a straight fight. That does not mean we cannot win. Lisa frowned. What do you mean? But Daniel did not answer. He was staring at the images again, his mind working through possibilities that the others could not see. He had spent his entire life studying the rules that governed the galaxy. Treaties, laws, ancient agreements between species that had been dead for thousands of years. Most people found such things boring. Daniel found them useful. Get me a secure channel to President Price, he said. And find Marcus Young. Tell him I need everything he has on the Galactic Compact. Everything. The Galactic Compact? Lisa shook her head. That's ancient history. Nobody follows those rules anymore. The Vexri believe that, Daniel said. Let's hope they continue to believe it. Kevin and Lisa exchanged confused looks, but they did as he asked. Soon the ship was moving, carrying them back toward Earth, back toward the waiting government, back toward a decision that would change everything. Daniel sat alone in his cabin, looking out at the stars. Somewhere behind them, the Vexri fleet waited like hungry wolves. Ahead of them, Earth turned slowly in the darkness, home to 12 billion people who had no idea what was coming. He thought about his daughter, living in a small house near the ocean on Earth. He thought about his grandchildren, playing in the garden without any fear of the sky above them. He thought about all the humans who were just living their lives, trusting that people like him would keep them safe. I will not let them take everything, Daniel whispered to himself. Not without a fight. Just not the kind of fight they expect. He closed his eyes and began to plan. 24 hours was not much time. But for a man who had spent his life reading the fine print, it might just be enough. The government building in Geneva was full of shouting voices. Leaders from every nation on Earth had gathered in the Great Hall, and none of them agreed on what to do. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. Some simply wanted to pray. President Amanda Price stood at the center of it all. She was a small woman with silver hair and tired eyes, but her voice carried strength when she spoke. She had led humanity through difficult times before, but nothing like this. Enough, she said, and the room slowly became quiet. Admiral Wells, give us your report. Admiral Christopher Wells stepped forward. He was an old soldier with a face that had seen too many battles. He pressed a button and a holographic map appeared above the table. Red dots covered the display, each one representing a Vexri warship. The enemy has 10,000 ships in position around our home system, he said. We have 612 ships capable of combat. Even with perfect tactics, we would lose 90% of our forces in the first hour of fighting. After that, Earth would have no defense at all. A woman in the back stood up. So we fight and die? Is that what you're telling us? I am telling you the truth, Wells said. If we fight, we lose. There is no military solution to this problem. The shouting started again. Daniel Harper sat quietly in his chair near the front, watching and listening. Lisa Monroe was beside him, her fingers moving quickly over her datapad as she gathered information from across human space. President Price raised her hand again. Daniel, you spoke with Maldois directly. What is your assessment? Daniel stood slowly. Every eye in the room turned to him. The Vexri are not interested in negotiation. They see us as weak, and weak species do not deserve respect in their eyes. If we fight, they will enjoy crushing us. If we surrender, they will enjoy owning us. Either way, they believe they have already won. Then what do you suggest? A senator asked. You're supposed to be our best diplomat. What can diplomacy do against 10,000 warships? Daniel looked at the man calmly. Diplomacy cannot stop their ships, but it can do other things. Things they do not expect. President Price studied Daniel's face. She had known him for 20 years, and she had learned to trust his instincts. What are you planning, Daniel? I am planning to give them exactly what they want, Daniel said. For now. The room erupted again. People screamed about betrayal and cowardice. But Daniel waited patiently until the noise died down. The Vexeri expect us to fight or beg, he continued. If we fight, we die. If we beg, we look weak. But if we accept their terms calmly, with dignity, we buy ourselves time. Time to find another way. Another way. Admiral Wells frowned. What other way is there? Daniel turned to a young man sitting in the corner of the room. Marcus, tell them what you found. Marcus Young was a legal historian, thin and nervous, with glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. He had spent his entire career studying ancient galactic laws that most people had forgotten. Now he stood up, holding a stack of old documents. There are rules, Marcus said. Old rules. The Galactic Compact was written 4,000 years ago, when the first great empires began expanding across the stars. It contains laws about conquest, surrender, and sovereignty. Most species ignore these laws now, but they were never officially canceled. They still exist, so what? Someone called out. The Vexeri won't follow ancient laws. They might have to, Marcus said, because other species are watching. The Vexeri have many enemies. If those enemies see the Vexeri breaking galactic law, they might decide to act. President Price was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. You are asking me to surrender our worlds, our military, our freedom, on the hope that some old law might save us later. I am asking you to trust me, Daniel said. I know this is hard, but I have read those old laws, Madam President, and I believe I have found something the Vexeri forgot. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, there was no real choice. Fighting meant death. Surrender meant survival, at least for now. And Daniel Harper was offering something that nobody else had, hope. When Daniel returned to the diplomatic station, High Sovereign Maldois was waiting in the great hall. Around him, dozens of Vexeri nobles watched with hungry eyes. They expected to see humans crawling, begging, crying. They expected a show of weakness. Daniel gave them none of that. He walked into the room with his head held high. Lisa and Kevin followed behind him, their faces calm and controlled. They stopped before the High Sovereign and stood in silence. Well? Maldois smiled his terrible smile. What is your answer, little human? Daniel reached into his coat and pulled out a document. The United Earth Federation accepts your terms. We surrender all colonial territories. We transfer control of our military assets. We recognize the authority of the Vexeri Empire over human space. Maldois laughed. It was a deep, ugly sound that echoed through the hall. How wonderful. The mighty humans brought to their knees. I told my advisors this would be easy. They did not believe me. He took the document from Daniel's hands and held it up for everyone to see. Let it be known across the galaxy. Humanity has fallen. The Vexeri Empire has added another species to its collection. The nobles cheered and clapped their four hands together. It was a celebration of victory, of conquest, of power. Daniel stood perfectly still through all of it, his face showing nothing. Lisa stepped close to him. Are you sure about this? She whispered. Daniel watched Maldois dancing with joy. The alien had no idea what he had just agreed to. He had only seen what he wanted to see. A weak species giving up without a fight. They made a mistake, Daniel whispered back. They did not read the fine print. Lisa frowned. What fine print? But Daniel just smiled, very slightly. You'll see. We all will. But not yet. We need to let them think they've won. We need them confident and careless. Because when the moment comes, they need to be completely surprised. He watched as Maldois raised the surrender document above his head like a trophy. The High Sovereign had no idea that he was holding a trap. And by the time he figured it out, it would be far too late. 3 days after the surrender, Daniel Harper requested a meeting with High Sovereign Maldois. The request was granted immediately. Why would the Vexery refuse? They had won. The humans were their property now. What could one old diplomat possibly do? The meeting took place on the Vexery flagship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Dominion. Daniel had never seen a ship so large. It was like a city floating in space, with towers and gardens and thousands of Vexery walking its halls. This was power made visible. This was what an empire looked like. Admiral Sarax met them at the docking bay. He was a military commander, covered in medals and scars. He looked at the humans with the same expression a person might use when looking at insects. The High Sovereign is busy, Sarax said. Make this quick. Of course, Daniel said politely. We simply wish to clarify a few points in the surrender agreement. Sarax laughed. Clarify? What is there to clarify? You lost. We won. Your worlds belong to us now. Yes, that is exactly what I wish to discuss. They were led through long corridors to the throne room. It was the largest room Daniel had ever seen, with ceilings that disappeared into shadows above. Hundreds of Vexery nobles filled the space, along with representatives from a dozen other alien species. These were observers, Daniel knew, other empires that did business with the Vexery. They were here to watch the latest conquest. Maldois sat on a throne made of black metal. His yellow eyes found Daniel as soon as he entered, and his mouth twisted into a smile. Ah, the human diplomat. Come to beg for better treatment for your people? No, Daniel said. I have come to talk about Article 7, subsection 12 of the Galactic Compact. The room went silent. Maldois tilted his massive head. I do not know what you are talking about. I expected that. Daniel turned to Marcus Young, who stood nervously behind him. Marcus, please explain. Marcus stepped forward, holding a datapad with shaking hands. But his voice was steady as he spoke. The Galactic Compact was written 4,000 years ago by the First Council. It established rules for all spacefaring species. Rules about trade, territory, and conquest. Most importantly, rules about surrender. Maldois waved a hand dismissively. Ancient history. Nobody follows those rules anymore. Actually, they do. Marcus pulled up a document on his datapad and projected it into the air. The Vexery Empire used Article 3 of the Galactic Compact just 50 years ago to claim protection for your homeworld. After the Kellory Wars, you cannot say the compact does not apply when you use it yourself. Some of the alien observers began to whisper among themselves. Maldois noticed. His smile faded slightly. What is your point, human? Daniel stepped forward. Article 7, subsection 12 states that any species which surrenders under military pressure while protecting a registered sanctuary world maintains sovereign claim to all territories within 500 light years of that world. The surrender is legally void. Earth is not a sanctuary world, Maldois said. It is just a planet. Actually, it is. Marcus switched to a different document. 8,000 years ago, a species called the Architects registered Earth as a protected sanctuary. They were studying the early life forms there. Primitive humans, animals, plants. The Architects are extinct now, but their registration was never cancelled. Earth is still officially a sanctuary world under galactic law. The whispers grew louder. Daniel watched the faces of the alien observers. He saw surprise, confusion, and in some cases, hope. Many of these species had suffered under Vessery rule. They were interested in anything that might weaken the Empire. Maldoy stood up from his throne. His forearms spread wide, and his voice thundered through the room. This is nonsense. You cannot escape conquest with ancient paperwork. It is not paperwork, Daniel said calmly. It is law. The same law you have used to protect your own interests for centuries. You cannot follow the Galactic Compact when it helps you and ignore it when it does not. I can do whatever I want. Maldoy stepped down from his throne and walked toward Daniel. The High Sovereign was massive, nearly 3 times Daniel's size. His shadow fell over the human like a dark cloud. I have 10,000 ships. You have nothing. Do you really think some old words will stop me? Daniel did not step back. He looked up into those yellow eyes without fear. I think that everyone in this room is watching. I think that every species in the galaxy will hear about this moment. And I think that if you ignore galactic law, you will show them all that the Vessery cannot be trusted. That any treaty with your empire is worthless. Maldoy raised one of his hands. For a moment, Daniel thought the alien might strike him down right there. But then Maldoy stopped. He looked around the room at all the watching eyes. The Talari ambassador was taking notes. The Morinth representative was already speaking quietly into a communication device. The Cathari delegation looked openly pleased. These were all species that had treaties with the Vessery. Treaties that depended on the Empire following its agreements. You are playing a dangerous game, human, Maldoy said quietly. I am playing the only game I can, Daniel replied. I cannot fight your ships, but I can ask a simple question. Will the Vessery follow their own rules? Or will they prove that their word means nothing? Maldoy stared at him for a long moment. Then the High Sovereign turned and walked back to his throne. This matter will be decided by the Galactic Arbitration Council. If they agree with your foolish interpretation of ancient law, so be it. But I warn you, human, if this is a trick, if this is some kind of delay tactic, I will make your species suffer in ways you cannot imagine. Daniel bowed his head slightly. I look forward to the Council's judgment. As he turned to leave, Lisa fell into step beside him. That was either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both, Daniel admitted. But we bought ourselves time, and we showed the galaxy that we will not be conquered quietly. Behind them, the throne room buzzed with conversation. The alien observers were already sending messages to their governments. Word would spread quickly. The humans had challenged the mighty Vessery Empire, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. You forgot the rule, Daniel whispered to himself as they walked back to their ship. And now the galaxy is watching. The Hall of Arbitration on Desser Prime had not been used in 800 years. It was an ancient building made from white stone that seemed to glow in the light of the planet's 3 suns. Inside, seats rose in circles around a central floor, like a great theater. Today, every seat was filled. Representatives from over 60 species had come to watch. Some had traveled for weeks to reach this neutral world. The case of humanity versus the Vessery Empire was the biggest event in galactic politics in centuries. Everyone wanted to see it with their own eyes. Daniel Harper stood on the central floor, wearing a simple black suit. Beside him were Lisa Monroe, Marcus Young, and Ambassador Rebecca Lane. Rebecca was the official human representative to the galactic community. A tall woman with kind eyes and a voice that could fill any room. Across from them stood High Sovereign Mallois and his advisors. The Vessery leader looked angry. He had been forced to come here to defend his conquest before judges and observers. For a being who believed in power above all else, this was an insult. At the highest seat in the hall sat Arbiter Kalani. She was ancient, even by alien standards. Her species lived for thousands of years, and she had been serving as a judge for most of that time. Her skin was like polished silver, and her eyes were deep pools of black. When she spoke, everyone listened. "This session of the Galactic Arbitration Council is now open," Calvani said. Her voice was soft but carried to every corner of the room. "We are here to judge the matter of Earth's surrender to the Vexari Empire. The humans claim protection under Article 7 of the Galactic Compact. The Vexari dispute this claim. Both sides will present their arguments. I will then make my judgment." Rebecca Lane stepped forward first. "Arbiter, the facts are simple. 8,000 years ago, the architects registered Earth as a protected sanctuary world. This registration was never canceled. Under Article 7, Subsection 12 of the Galactic Compact, any species that surrenders while protecting a sanctuary world keeps sovereign claim to nearby territories. The surrender forced upon humanity is therefore legally void." Marcus Young projected documents into the air above the floor. Records from the Architect Archives. Maps showing Earth's location. The original registration forms preserved in ancient databases for millennia. "This is all true and verified," Marcus said. "We have checked every detail. Earth is a sanctuary world. The law is clear." Maldoy stepped forward, his forearms crossed over his massive chest. "This is a game of words. The architects are extinct. They have been dead for 5,000 years. Their registrations mean nothing." "The compact says otherwise," Rebecca replied. "A sanctuary registration remains valid until officially canceled by the registering species or by the Arbitration Council itself. Neither has happened. The registration stands." "Then I request that the Council cancel it now," Maldoy said. "This is obviously an outdated document with no current meaning." Arbiter Calvani raised one silver hand. "The Council cannot cancel registrations to benefit one party in an active dispute. That would defeat the purpose of having laws at all." Maldoy made a sound of frustration. "This is ridiculous. We conquered the humans through superior force. That is how the galaxy has always worked. The strong take from the weak. And yet," Calvani said, "you yourself used the Galactic Compact to protect Vexari, prime after the Kilori Wars. You claimed that ancient law protected your homeworld from occupation. Were you wrong to do so?" The throne room fell silent. Maldoy had no answer. He had indeed used the compact when it helped him. Everyone in the room knew it. "The law must apply equally to all," Calvani continued. "You cannot claim its protection when it serves you and deny it when it does not. That is not law. That is simply power." Daniel watched the alien observers carefully. He saw them nodding, whispering to each other. Many of these species had suffered under Vexari expansion. They had watched the Empire break treaties, ignore agreements, and crush anyone who opposed them. Now they were seeing something different. They were seeing the Vexari held accountable. Calvani studied the documents floating in the air. She examined the architect registration, the text of the Galactic Compact, the records of the Vexari's own use of these laws. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady and sure. "I have reviewed the evidence. The architect registration is valid. Earth is a protected sanctuary world. Under Article 7 of the Galactic Compact, the human surrender is void. All human territories must be returned. All military assets must be released. The Vexari occupation must end." The hall erupted in noise. Some species cheered. Others gasped. The Vexari delegation shouted in anger. But Calvani raised her hand again, and slowly the room became quiet. Maldoy stepped forward, his eyes burning with rage. "This judgment is unacceptable. I will not be bound by the decisions of ancient fools who wrote laws thousands of years before I was born. The Vexari Empire answers to no one. Then you intend to ignore this ruling? Calvani asked. I intend to keep what I have taken, Maldoy said. My ships are still in position. My soldiers are still on human worlds. What will you do about it, old woman? Write another law? The room went very still. Maldois had just openly declared that he would violate galactic law. Every representative was watching, recording, preparing to report back to their governments. Daniel Harper stepped forward. He had been waiting for this moment. Arbiter, if I may? Calvani nodded. I, Sovereign Maldois, Daniel said. I was hoping you would say that. Maldois frowned. What do you mean? Daniel smiled. It was a small smile, calm and patient. The smile of a man who had spent his entire life preparing for exactly this moment. I mean that you just made a terrible mistake. And by the time you understand what you have done, it will be far too late to fix it. He turned and walked toward the exit, leaving Maldois staring after him in confusion. Lisa, Marcus, and Rebecca followed. Behind them, the hall was already buzzing with conversation. The galaxy had just witnessed something remarkable. And the best part was still to come. The message reached every corner of Vexery space within hours. High Sovereign Maldois had openly declared that he would ignore the ruling of the Galactic Arbitration Council. He would keep his occupation of human worlds. He would hold on to his conquest through pure military force. It was exactly what Daniel Harper had been waiting for. On a small moon far from Earth, Natalie Cole sat in a hidden communications center. She was the director of human intelligence, and she had been very busy during the weeks of diplomatic theater. While Daniel argued with the Vexery, Natalie had been sending quiet messages to dozens of alien species. Species that had suffered under Vexery rule. Species that had been conquered, enslaved, and humiliated. Species that were waiting for an opportunity. Now that opportunity had arrived. Send the signal, Natalie said to her team. All channels. All contacts. Tell them it's time. On 47 different worlds, alien leaders received the same message. The Vexery have violated galactic law. The compact is now in effect. You know what to do. Daniel stood on the bridge of a human ship, watching the communication screens light up with reports. One by one, the subject species of the Vexery Empire began to act. Picellori announced that they were reclaiming their ancient homeworld. The Manthi declared independence and seized control of 3 Vexery military stations. The Dazari closed their borders and refused to allow Vexery ships to pass. The Morinth froze all trade agreements. And dozens more followed. Lisa Monroe stood beside Daniel, her eyes wide with amazement. How did you know they would do this? Article 7 has 2 parts, Daniel explained. The first part protects sanctuary worlds, but the second part is the real weapon. It states that any empire which violates a sanctuary ruling forfeits protection under galactic law. All treaties with that empire become void. All conquered territories may be legally reclaimed. So when Maldois said he would ignore the ruling, he gave every species the Vexery ever conquered the legal right to fight back. Daniel nodded. Natalie spent weeks making sure they were ready. We could not defeat the Vexery alone, but we could give others the reason and the courage to stand with us. The reports kept coming. Vexery forces across the galaxy suddenly found themselves surrounded by enemies. Ships that had been allies yesterday were now hostile. Trade routes that had been open were now closed. Military bases that had been safe were now under attack, and then Admiral Wells appeared on the main screen, his face showing a rare smile. It worked, he said. The Vexery are pulling ships away from Earth to deal with rebellions across their empire. We have an opening. What about our hidden fleet? Daniel asked, ready and waiting. Wells nodded. 32 ships, built in secret in the asteroid fields beyond Jupiter. Not enough to defeat the Vexery alone, but enough to make a difference now. The next few days were chaos for the Vexery Empire. Mallois tried to hold everything together, but his forces were stretched too thin. Every time he sent ships to crush one rebellion, two more started somewhere else. The subject species had been waiting for this moment for centuries. They were not going to let it pass. On the fifth day, a Vexery ship arrived at Thesser Prime, carrying a message from High Sovereign Mallois. He wanted to negotiate. Daniel met the Vexery ambassador in the same hall of arbitration where the original ruling had been made. Arbiter Calvani was there again, watching with her ancient eyes. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, eager to witness history. The Vexery ambassador looked tired and worried. He was not Mallois himself. The High Sovereign was too proud to come, but he carried the authority to speak for the Empire. "We propose a settlement," the ambassador said. "The Vexery Empire will withdraw from all human territories. We will release all human military assets. We will pay compensation for damages caused during the occupation." "And what about the other species?" Daniel asked. "The Kelori, the Manthi, the others who are now fighting for their freedom?" The ambassador hesitated. "That is a separate matter." "No, it is not." Daniel shook his head. "Humanity will not accept any deal that leaves our allies behind. Either everyone gets their freedom, or nobody does." The room fell silent. The alien representatives stared at Daniel with surprise, and in many cases, admiration. Humanity had been given a chance to save themselves. Instead, they were risking everything for others. The ambassador spoke quietly into a communication device. A long conversation followed. Finally, he turned back to Daniel. "The Vexery Empire agrees to full withdrawal from all territories conquered in the past 200 years. All subject species will be granted independence. Reparations will be paid. The Empire will return to its original borders. And there will be no retaliation?" "None." Daniel turned to look at the other alien representatives. The Kelori ambassador was crying. The Manthi delegation was hugging each other. Centuries of oppression were ending in this moment. "Then we accept," Daniel said. Arbiter Calvani stood and addressed the hall. "Let this moment be remembered. Today, a small species challenged a great empire. Not with weapons, but with knowledge. Not with violence, but with patience. They found a forgotten rule and used it to free not just themselves, but many others. Let all species learn from this example." A year later, Daniel Harper sat in a garden on Earth. His daughter's house was nearby, and he could hear his grandchildren playing in the yard. The sky was blue and peaceful. The Vexery were gone. President Price had offered him any position he wanted. Ambassador, Secretary of State, anything. He had refused them all. He was tired. He had done what needed to be done. Now it was time for younger people to carry on. Lisa Monroe visited him sometimes. She was now a senior diplomat herself, working to build the coalition of free worlds that had grown from the rebellion against the Vexery. 47 species working together, with humanity as a founding member. "You changed the galaxy," Lisa said to him one afternoon. "You saved us all." Daniel shook his head. "I just read the fine print. That is all any of us can do. Pay attention. Think carefully. And never assume that the powerful will always win." He looked up at the sky, where ships moved among the stars. Ships from 100 different worlds, trading and exploring together. A new era was beginning. "Empires rise and fall on the battlefield," Daniel said quietly. "But wars are won in the fine print." And somewhere far away, what remained of the Vexery Empire had learned that lesson very well.